The inaugural Sustainable Business Conference is taking place, with events in Guernsey on Tuesday 15th of October and Jersey on Wednesday 16th. With keynote speakers, panel interviews and roundtable discussions, it's intended to drive discussions around positive changes for a more sustainable future for everyone. The conference's headline sponsor is law firm-led professional services business Morant. Director of Morant Consulting, Sally Rochester, will be hosting the events.
Let's remember what sustainability is. This is about the current and future well-being of people and planet. And I think it would be hard to argue that that's not the most important thing for us, especially as we see climate change having a local and international impact. You know, we see the inequality globally, but also, sadly, I think we see more of that here on our island as well. So these problems are not far away problems. They're problems that we are seeing and dealing with here on our island. So my view on this is that there isn't a single lever we shouldn't be pulling. You know, so personally, can we do more? Yes. You know, the Nature Commission published their first State of Nature report yesterday, and I haven't read it all. It's a big report, but what I have read is really brilliant. You know, it's a Bible of how to look after nature. You know, what everybody should do, and they look at, you know, what can you do individually, what can you do as a gardener, what can you do as a corporate, what can government do. So I think they've approached it brilliantly, and I think on the broader topic of sustainability, which covers nature, carbon, social elements, of course, governance, you know, we can all be doing something. So that's why I think looking at corporate sustainability, as well as considering my personal journey, is the right thing to do, because it means we're pushing forwards on all fronts to try and solve this really complicated problem.
Yeah, in terms of corporate sustainability though, is everyone pulling in the same direction, in the right direction? Is the message kind of getting across to all business sectors?
I think it is. So, you know, I fundamentally believe people are good, you know, and that there's this interesting situation we've been in historically where business leaders make decisions solely on financial information. And actually in the last 2 or 3 decades, business leaders have been told to make decisions always in pursuit of short-term profit to benefit the shareholder. So that leads to decisions being made in a one-dimensional way. So you can make a decision about what products you're going to create. Will it make the most profit? Yes, tick. Okay, off we go. What you haven't thought about there is, what am I going to damage the natural world? What carbon emissions am I going to create? You know, will our product perpetuate social inequality? We're doing damage to our consumers by selling this product. You know, all these ways of thinking about that decision haven't been part of business life. I think all businesses are starting to think about this topic, but I think the main barrier to them making progress is understanding the problem and understanding what tools are available to be part of the solution. And that's what this conference is designed to achieve.
Sally's journey towards living a more sustainable life spans her professional roles and personal commitments. In pursuing her interest in sustainability, she's met many people who have helped her along this journey, and the inaugural Sustainable Business Conference is intended to help more people on their own journeys too. She told me what to expect from the 2 events and how she first became interested in the wider topic.
It goes back quite a few years, actually, when I first joined the advisory team at Deloitte, and my professional day job is risk and regulatory advice, and I was sitting one afternoon and thinking, wouldn't it be wonderful in the future to set up a consulting business that send consultants out to spend a week with families to live their life in their house, and then you could produce a report at the end of the week saying these are the small changes you can make to live a more sustainable life. And I just thought that was a lovely idea, and that, you know, my big challenge has always been knowing what's the right decision to make to do better. You know, we don't have the information we need to make good decisions, and it takes a lot of education and understanding even defining sustainability seems to be a challenge. So, that idea of somebody coming in, swooping in and helping you is really appealing. And then I got the opportunity professionally to develop my understanding of the world of sustainability, which I did over a few years. I did some work with Guernsey Finance and really enjoyed the topic, and Deloitte's commitment to climate change management is very impressive, and so I worked with some of the teams there in London in Deloitte. And then I ended up moving to do a different role, and in accepting the Marant role, really wanted to pursue this interest that I developed of corporate sustainability predominantly. And so we agreed that Marant would be kind enough to part fund my Masters in Sustainable Leadership at Cambridge University, which I'm now halfway through. It's been absolutely fascinating, and one of the biggest privileges of doing the course has been the incredible quality of speakers that I've heard from during the course. Having the time to learn and listening firsthand to some global names talk about the topic has been really inspiring. So that's my journey. Personally, am I as good as I should be on carbon emissions and sustainable choices? Absolutely not. And that's in part because making those decisions is hard. Living on an island, it's hard to limit your travel. But I'd say that's something that I am focused on doing better on in the future, and we're all on a bit of a journey on that front. So.
Sally thinks the conferences will help businesses and individuals make better decisions for the benefit of the wider planet while still encouraging economic success. It will benefit both those who are already on their sustainability journey and those who are looking for some help to get started. And this will all be aided by the experienced guest speakers booked in.
So Dr Victoria Hirth is going to talk about that point about being profit-led organisations, and if we're going to ensure the future well-being of people and planet, what is it that businesses need to be thinking about instead. Steve is kindly coming over to talk about the UN Global Compact, which is a very well-established, simple, I think, framework that businesses can just lift and drop into their business and use as a way to start on their sustainability journey. And what I'm particularly impressed by with the UN Global Compact is not only have they got this framework that's free to use for any business, but there's an amazing abundance of really good educational webinars and articles and seminars that you can join to just make it easy to carry on that journey, which is superb. And then, of course, Dr Marc Kahn's going to be talking to us. He's Chief of Strategy and Sustainability at Investec, so very much about practical experience, and he's talking about organisation and people behaviour and how you can think about those in a slightly different way to support a more sustainable future.
Now, of those guest speakers, Dr Marc Kahn was able to join me ahead of the Sustainable Business Conference to talk me through his own sustainability journey and what he thinks the events in Guernsey and Jersey will be able to achieve.
I look after two areas which are inherently entangled. One is the group strategy function, so it's a global role based in London, but really look at the group strategy, which is the aggregation of all the jurisdictions and businesses as a combined strategy inside of our listing as a single share. And then on the other hand, I also look after our sustainability function. That's also in terms of the group globally. And there our focus is on, driven primarily by our purpose, which is to create enduring worth, but it's broken down across our operations, our products and services, and our philanthropic activities. So in our operations, it's the extent to which we focus our operations in being positive for people and the environment. For our products and services, it's focused heavily on decarbonisation of our ecosystem, and of which our sustainable finance offerings are a current focus, and philanthropic activities broadly, both social and climate related, but heavily social, particularly in Africa.
And how closely intertwined then is sustainability with strategy when it comes to the corporate world for Investec and other companies?
I think it's an excellent question, because that I think it's probably the most important question. The way I would put it is that up until the last few years in industry, most commercial entities focused almost entirely on returns to shareholders and positive profitable outcomes for clients. And then with those profits, took a portion and then tried to do good with it, either for people or planet or both. Okay. Now that's been kind of leading up to, say, 5 to 10 years ago. There's been the good companies did that. Okay.
Yeah.
But what's changed, and to answer your question, the way in which strategy and sustainability interlace, is that form of participation in the world on behalf of commercial entities is not sufficient to affect the kind of change we need to deal with the two greatest threats, one being climate change and the other being inequality. Your S and your E, if you want to put it that way. So those two threats, it appears, are not sufficiently being reduced through the natural transactional activities of companies, where they follow this idea of, well, we'll make profits and give returns to shareholders, and then we'll do some good with some leftovers. That just won't do anymore in the zeitgeist. So where the world has changed in the last 5 to 10 years is that the realization, I guess in some ways, the penny has dropped for some companies sooner than others. There are quite a few companies the penny still needs to drop, and I use the word penny dropping, pun intended. And I think that the key point there is that what's meant by the penny dropping is that what has to change is that the commercial strategies themselves need to be positive for people and planet. So it's as important to produce returns for shareholders as it's ever been. It's as important to produce good client outcomes or customer outcomes, if that's the word you're using, as it's ever been. However, what's changed is that the strategies to achieve those must simultaneously also be, at the very least, do no harm, but actually should try as much as possible in the nature of that transaction to be positive for the climate and to be reducing inequality wherever possible. And to the extent that commercial enterprise can build their bread and butter strategies in that complex way, multiple stakeholder outcomes, then we have a chance of dealing with these two vectors, inequality and climate change, and not necessarily creating an incredibly dangerous reality for human life in the future. So that's the speech. Sorry.
When did sustainability and sustainable finance really come to the fore? I was thinking in the past decade, and you did reference kind of 5-10 years ago, companies have really started embracing this. I mean, is that time frame accurate, would you say?
I think so. Look, different countries seem to have moved to adoption at very different times, and some countries are not there at all even today. I don't want to embarrass countries by saying what they are, but anyone can have a look at which countries are not participating and are increasing their carbon emissions year on year, in very serious ways. So some countries have been there a long time ago already, actually, much longer than 10 years. But for Britain, I think it has been a kind of middle of the road. I would say British industry has done relatively well in certain ways. Certain aspects of renewable energy in the British grid are very attractive. In fact, in Britain, we turned off yesterday, the very last coal-fired power station was turned off after, I think it was 137 years or 160 years, I can't remember exactly, but since the Industrial Revolution, really. And the grid in Britain at the moment on any single day, on average, is about 50% renewable energy now. You have other countries in the world that are sitting at 80-90% coal-fired energy even today, and don't look like they're going to be able to do much with it. And then you have other countries who are even, doing better than us. So that's just on carbon. But in terms of commercial enterprise, I would say that the penny dropping comment, I would say that that's more recent than 10 years. That's a lot more recent. I think that, probably it started just pre-COVID. Certain commercial plays and enterprises were starting to see the reality of this pre-COVID. COVID was a strange hiatus in it because it just made things crazy, and one can philosophize about why. And there were some weird things in COVID that people realized that there was no smog in certain cities because everyone stayed home. It was a kind of strange perspective to take on it. Not good, not bad. But since COVID, we've just seen an enormous rise in interest in this, and governments have started to introduce a wide range of actions, including legislation and regulations and so forth, which are making big inroads into what you can and can't do commercially. Like in the real estate industry in the United Kingdom, you know, beyond a certain date, if you don't have an EPC rating of a certain amount, you won't be able to let out your property. That type of legislation is changing commercial strategy, which is a necessary partnership that has to happen. Look at wind energy in Britain is now, with the new Labour leadership, that's a lot more, the prospects for that are more interesting. So politics is in this a lot, and commerce and politics can't really be separated from a strategic point of view here.
Obviously for Guernsey though, Guernsey, a very small island, but with lots of connections through its finance sector in particular. Why are events like this important?
I think that the problem with change, and I use the word change here very deliberately, the problem with the kind of change that we need in industry is that it begins with a new form of understanding.
Okay.
And that means education is actually where you have to begin. It's no good saying to someone, change the way you do business, without explaining why. And it's not a simple why, it's a complex why. And it's also no good asking people to change the way they do business without showing them the repercussions of not changing to their business, which are negative. Unless business is about viability, not validity. I always just kind of constructs that I like to use. Business is almost amoral, although certainly there are many, and I'm one of them, that think that should not be the case. Business should have a moral underline. But in its very nature, business is really about doing whatever works to produce a return, viable, within the legal constraints provided. So inside of the legal constraints, the philosophy of business would be, well, how do I create a positive financial outcome, And unless you can, and if you want business to do it differently, you have to show them that there's a risk and an opportunity to change. There's a risk in not changing to the returns you're seeking to make. And there is an opportunity to change to make even more returns. And unless business can see that, even if it wants to change, it follows its natural cycle of the raison d'etre is to make a return. So the Sustainable Business Conference isn't to tell business they're right or they're wrong. It's to show the business world that there's a great opportunity, a business opportunity, in producing the kind of products and services that help the world from an inequality and from a climate point of view, and that there's a risk to do business that does harm to the business itself. That's the education needed, because most people don't really know that, to be honest. They actually don't know, and if they do know, they're trying to see how. How is that? I don't understand. I can do some good in the world, but I'm going to make money from that. I don't see how that works. I sell shoes in my store. What's that got to do with anything? And that's the creative education that's needed. So that's why the conference is important.
Okay, and in terms of, I'm presuming you've spoken at events like this previously. What are you expecting from the day itself? How I understand there's going to be talks with yourself and the other speakers, chance for interviews and roundtable discussions. What do you hope to get out of the day, and what do you hope other people will get out of the day?
Personally, I always hope to learn myself. I think what I've realized working in this space is that it's so enormous.
Mm-hmm.
The challenge is so enormous that whatever you think it's
You don't.
the next day you realize, wow, I didn't even realize this or that, and I didn't see that, or I couldn't. So if I do get the opportunity, it's not that often, but if I get the opportunity to go to these types of things, whether or not I'm speaking, I'm actually listening to what other people have to say. There often are excellent other speakers, and I learn a lot from them, and so forth. So it's not like we have all the answers. I mean, if you take, like, I'm very interested, let's take, electric vehicles. That's quite a nice example. It's amazing how many people don't know that, financing electric vehicles and electric vehicles themselves from a climate point of view is a high risk product. And the reason it's high risk is because there's a lot of components that go into producing electric vehicles, which are, the mining of those and the production of those, and is not necessarily good for the planet. And then at the end of the life of a battery, we don't really have clever solutions at the moment on what we're going to do with all these end of life electric vehicle batteries, and that presents a sustainability challenge.
Yeah.
So you can see the complexity just in that particular asset, electric vehicle, because we can't carry on burning fossil fuel to move our vehicles around. That's obviously wrong, but at the same time, the alternative that we have is not without its climate related problems. So we have to think very carefully about all these changes we're making. It's not as if doing that's wrong and do this, it's right. It's not that simple. And there's this thing called, circularity, which is important. So it's complex and interesting. I learn every day. And most days I go to bed and think to myself, I'm really overwhelmed with what we've got what we've got to deal with. But it's also very interesting and inspiring to work and see what we're coming up with. Human beings are remarkable. I have faith in our innovative ability, even though there are days I look around at some people and leaders and I just hang my head in shame to be a member of the species. But most days I'm inspired by us.
Yeah, and I think it's that inquisitive mind that many human beings have that you've obviously got, which is why I always think events like this are so enjoyable, because you do get that chance, don't you, to think about things that maybe you haven't thought about before, but other people bring that information. And again, bringing it back to Guernsey, we're a small island, a small jurisdiction. There will be lots of topics at this conference that are directly relatable to Guernsey residents, Guernsey businesses, and all their networks and connections elsewhere in the world.
Exactly. I think, and the unique, from a business point of view, the unique position in the financial ecosystem that the Channel Islands presents and has presented has always been a subject of discussion and with regard to, good financial conduct and so forth. Yeah. So that is part of sustainability. Positive, ethical financial conduct in all economies is important. And the Channel Islands occupies itself in thinking about that and trying to participate in a positive way. But it's not always easy. And we see the complexity, certainly geopolitical risks. So on the governance side of financial flows, capital flows are an important part of sustainability. Sustainable capital flows are also ethical capital flows. And it's a huge challenge. It's a huge challenge in the whole world. So, Channel Islands finds itself inside that ecosystem of moving money around the world. And that's part of sustainability. That's part of making the world a more a less dangerous place for us as a species, and a fairer place.
Tickets can be booked for the inaugural Sustainable Business Conference in Guernsey and Jersey through Eventbrite via sustainablebusinessconference.com.
Well, the positive message from this is that many have said, this will be tough to deliver in the first year. New conference concepts always are, but won't it be wonderful once it's up and running and it happens every year, which I hadn't even crossed my mind. I just thought, well, it'd be a great thing to do this year. But of course, if it's a success, if people want to hear more of what they hear on the 15th and 16th of October, I'd be delighted to carry on running the conference. And I think inaugural is actually the right word, because for many that attend the conference, they will be on their journey to sustainability, but many won't have started and won't know where to start. So I think the idea that we come together as business leaders every year and make some time to think about this really important topic is very pleasing. So, I'd love it to be an ongoing conference. And I think there's a space for it, because we don't have anything else on the islands at the moment that's dedicated to this topic.
So obviously there will be people who are already committed to sustainability within their corporate governance. But you mentioned there as well people who are interested, or I can't remember how you worded it now, but people who are just beginning their sustainability journey. This is for them as well. Come along and find out what.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm thrilled to see sustainability advocates and dedicated business leaders have signed up to the conference. What I would love to see is a bunch of names of business leaders that I don't know are thinking about this topic, because actually we're really covering the basics in this conference, as well as providing business leaders with tools for how to continue on their journey. So, I would love to give business leaders the time and space to think about this topic. They've all got 101 things on their list of things to do, and just taking that one afternoon to give themselves the time to think about it, I think would be really beneficial.
Okay, so what kind of things are going to be discussed? And in terms of times for questions and roundtable discussions, I think I saw, there will be the chance then. It's not just a listen and learn, it's a get involved and learn opportunity.
No, absolutely. And there's a few differences to this conference that we consciously put in place, because what we want attendees to come away with is they're not tackling this problem alone. This is such a big problem that we all need to work together and collaborate to be able to shift the dial and achieve successful outcomes. So the design of the conference has been very much about through the use of Slido and through those roundtable discussions, about sharing our individual experiences, where we are as a business, where we want to get to, talking about challenges and opportunities. So there'll be plenty of time through networking, through those roundtable discussions, which Victoria and others will be facilitating, to share views on and challenges on the topic. And similarly, in organising the conference, we have really tried to invite a very broad range of stakeholders. So yes, of course, we've got to make enough money with this conference to cover our costs, and business leaders are primary target for the conference, but we've also got politicians coming, policy people coming, third sector people coming. We want everybody that's on the island to come and hear the message and then be able to play their part in supporting action.
Yeah, because that buy-in from all different directions is necessary, isn't it? Because it's nothing is going to work unless everyone works together. So if we want to live a more sustainable life as an island community, we really all do need to work together. Politicians, governance, leading business sectors, and the smaller businesses as well.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the thing, is every business can do something. What they can do will be different, and it will contribute to moving forwards on a different topic. If you're a property developer, actually nature and land use is a really important part of what you can be thinking about. If you're a financial services business, what you're investing in and the impact that's going to have across the global community is obviously an area of focus for you. So different businesses will see this problem, be able to contribute to the solution in different ways. And I think understanding that across the sectors, not just in financial services or just in construction, is a really important part of the day.